In this lecture, we're going to have a writing session where I'm going to focus primarily on writing sentences, which is what this writing session is for. But naturally, we're going to run into paragraphs and dialogue, which are the next sections or the next lectures coming up. So let's begin writing something with, what about a haunted house? There we go. Let's say something like, Mary stepped tentatively through the doorway. So we have beginning with a capital on Mary. Now you'd capitalize that anyway because it's a name, and we're ending with a period. So this is a complete sentence because we have Mary. What did she do? She stepped. And how did she step? She stepped tentatively. Where? Through the doorway. So we have a complete sentence here. Now, the house she had entered was cloaked in darkness. So we have yet another sentence here. Began with a capital T for the, ends with a period. The house she had entered, that's the subject, was, and it was cloaked in darkness. So we have a complete sentence. And you notice how these complete sentences work. You have something that's the subject, the house she had entered, was, that's the verb, and then you have an object clause here at the end, which is what is describing kind of what she entered. So let's keep on writing sentences here. These are all written in a paragraph because all the sentences are related, and we're about to talk about paragraphs in the next lecture. There was no sound within the seemingly abandoned structure. Okay, so there was no sound, or actually you got, there was no sound. So there was no sound within the seemingly abandoned structure. So where there was no sound. So we have another complete sentence. And what you want to do is write complete sentence. Now, with sentences, the other thing that you want is you want to mix up a combination of short sentences and long sentences. It's all a matter of not boring your reader. Now, another thing that I just noticed is, look at this. The house she entered was cloaked in darkness. Now, was cloaked is being highlighted by a word here. And why do you think? Because it's passive speech. So they're saying, consider active voice here. How would you do active voice? I like passive voice quite often for things like this. But you'd say, let me see, darkness enveloped the house or something like that. That's more active. Darkness is enveloping in that case. In this case, you're being passive. You're saying the house was cloaked. So active voice is always preferred over passive voice. But I'm going to leave this passive voice here. And let's add another sentence. There was no sound within the seemingly... Now we're going to start a new paragraph. We haven't learned about paragraphs yet, but this is the first time that I'm going to hit enter, and that will create a new paragraph. Because she's going to say, hello? Is there anyone here? Mary called. So whenever you start dialogue, or whenever you have dialogue, or you start a new set of thoughts, you break into a new paragraph. And we're going to learn that in the next lecture. Now we go and we break into a new paragraph because that's all the dialogue. There was no answer to Mary's query. She continued on into the gloom. Fortunately, and that's a little a lead-in, so I'm going to say comma after that, she had brought brought spelled correctly, Let's get this up onto the screen. A flashlight with her that she turned on. So there, that's a somewhat larger or longer sentence that we're getting here. We're getting a nice mix. So let's just keep writing sentences here. In the light shed by the beam of her light, she could see that the furniture in the room was all covered with dusty white sheets. Now, is that a complete sentence? Let's take a look. In the shed by her beam, not or her light, of her light. So this is another lead-in here. So we want to set that aside by a comma. In the light shed by the beam of her light. Excuse me. She could see what? She could see that the furniture in the room was covered with dusty white sheets. And let's make sure our tense is right. The light was shed. That's past tense. That's good. She could see. How about she saw? That would be past tense too, or could see is past tense. But the furniture in the room was past tense, covered past tense with a dusty white sheets. So we've got it all past tense. Now let's see if we have subject-verb agreement. The light shed by the beam of her light. Okay. She could see that the furniture is singular, or, well, yeah, it is actually singular. Furniture is actually plural. But the furniture in the room was covered with, okay, so this looks like a good sentence. And we continue writing on. She stepped forward. Now, I would say something like tentatively, but I think I already used the word tentatively. So let's go up and look at, yeah, she stepped tentatively. Again, she's stepping tentatively in. So I don't want to say that twice. That's very rare, and I don't want to repeat it. So she walked further into the darkened room. She found a light switch on the wall and tried it, but to no avail. To no avail. So we're developing further her walking into this darkened house. Suddenly, that's a lead-in, she heard a crash. So suddenly, a little lead-in set off by a comma. She heard, so that's the subject and the verb. And what did she hear? She heard a crash. So that's a complete sentence. It's very short. And notice that short sentences, too, kind of grab your attention. So we were writing along with longer sentences, and then suddenly we came in with a short one. Suddenly, she heard a crash. Wow, that suddenly grabs your attention. And in fact, if you set it off in its own paragraph, it will even grab even more attention. Jumped to attention and pointed the beam of her light in the direction from which the sound had come. Once again, a longer sentence now. So we got that attention, short, pithy sentence out there to get attention. And now we go back to a longer sentence, which begins with a capital, but then Mary would always be capitalized and ends with a period. Mary jumped to attention, and she did something else. She pointed the beam of her light. Where did she do that? In the direction from which the sound had come. This is a complete sentence. Let's keep writing. She saw nothing that would explain the crashing sound. Now we go to a new paragraph because we're going to start a whole new set of thoughts. Mary considered leaving the house, but something drew her forward. Perhaps it was the excitement of discovery, but it was more likely that she didn't want to sound like a scaredy cat. Colloquialism there. When she later explained her adventure to her friends. Okay, now scaredy, it's saying, is probably doesn't know what scaredy is. Yeah, okay, so we're going to go with that for scaredy cat. Now, this is a very long sentence that I threw in. Perhaps it was the excitement of the discovery, but it was more likely that she didn't want to sound like a scaredy cat when she later explained her adventure to her friends. That is a complete sentence, although it's fairly long. So you want to pepper in long sentences along with short. Let's now have her go further into them. Once more, Mary was startled, this time by the sound of her own voice crying out when she barked. Love that word. That's also kind of an uncommon, slangy kind of word, but barked her shin on an end table. So we just keep on writing complete sentences. We break them into paragraphs, which we're about to talk about in the next section, and that's how you end up writing complete sentences. I hope that was enough of an example for you. In the next lecture, we're going to start talking about paragraphs, and that's this grouping of sentences, which are complete ideas, into related sentences that are talking about the same thing. So once again, it's this commonality that makes a sentence. A sentence has a complete thought, and many related complete thoughts are grouped into paragraphs, which are then grouped into chapters, which are then grouped into a book, which the many related paragraphs tell the entire story of a book. So I'll see you in the next lecture where we start talking about paragraphs.